everybody. Dan, I missed you this week.
Well, I missed you too.
That's the intro we're going with.
Yeah, that's what we're going with.
Howdy, everybody. Missed you last week. No. Hey, it's we are back with the weekly Skittles
Good to be missed.
conference call with, let's do some intros, hedge fund manager and chairman. What is your title of tradingwithcody.com? Founder,
yeah.
Founder,
Editor, publisher of Trading with Cody.
There you go.
Yeah.
Add all those titles in there.
Yeah.
Chairman of the Planetary Society, amongst many other titles, Dan Geraci. Hedge fund analyst, Bryce Smith.
Yep.
There we go. And it's just Joe Anderson. What's up, Joe? How you doing?
That's it. That's all I got.
I'm pretty sure Joe it would be okay with my title for him, American Badass.
There you go.
Yeah.
ABA.
Yeah.
I will probably make a sign of that, and you'll see it on this wall for next week.
There you go.
I have a song I recorded somewhere that I wrote called American Badass. I don't.
All right.
Ooh, let's not find that.
Yeah, it's
I
probably not.
got to write that down and remind myself.
Kid Rock has one.
It's a great term. Does he actually have a song called American Badass?
Yeah.
Oh, he stole it from me.
Oh, okay.
Totally. Mine's like 15 years ago. So unless his predates that, he stole it.
Well, Intuitive Machines, the name for their new headquarters from the time it was being designed, they called it the BAB, the Badass Building.
Oh, that's a good meaning. Bad.
Yeah.
I used to live in the building with Ryan Adams. You guys, not Brian Adams, but Ryan Adams, the rock star. And I don't remember what song it is, but I'm serious. He stole a riff of mine. I used to have this riff I jam on all the time, and I heard it on the radio one day. And I'm like, that's my song. And it was Ryan Adams. Lived in the building.
When did you write American Badass?
What's that?
When was American Badass, your version, written?
I'm going to go 2008.
All right. Kid Rock's was 2000, just saying.
Shit. All right, he got me. Good job, Kavana. Why don't you just call me out on everything today?
Yeah, we try to be factually accurate here.
The guy in the white shirt is calling me out, so this is great.
It's beach here, man. So it's like,
all right.
It's warm.
All right, let's talk space or stocks or cryptos or something. What do you want, Cabana?
I mean, we have the plunging markets on behind me, so I mean, we can just touch on that real quick. Bitcoin's kind of like holding 25,000. We could touch on that before we get into some space. Where you want to go?
Well, let's do it. Let's go in order of what you just said. Stocks. Look, I've been saying for a while that I feel like stocks are a little bit in purgatory. We're neither in hell nor in heaven. And when we get to hell, that's when you buy stocks. When you get to heaven, that's when you sell stocks. And right now, you just sort of muddle along, and I took advantage of today's sell-off to do a little nibbling, and I covered part of my GM short, covered part of my Ford short. I bought a little, Robinhood calls at the very end, a little bit of stuff, but nothing big, just, I'm in purgatory, so hang out. What's in purgatory? You don't have demons or angels. Does anybody, are there creatures in purgatory?
It's a slow roast. So
I guess like a little crypto related, Robinhood bought back, I guess, the FTX Sam Bankman fraud mess, right?
Yeah, let's walk through it a little bit. So at some point, Sam Bankman-Fried had been, according to my old mentor and friend Jim Cramer, the JP Morgan of crypto, and he was like the savior of everybody. Anthony Scaramucci, another one of my old friends, sold part of his company to FTX. FTX mostly bought that stuff for their eventually soon to be worthless. Soon after he bought the stuff, his cryptocurrency went to zero, and he was paying in that cryptocurrency for a lot of that stuff. Robinhood itself had, I think, gotten real money from him, but they went and bought back the fraud crypto king, Sam Bank, alleged, I guess still. Do we even have to say that? Like he's literally like in life right now. I mean, I guess it's until.
And that's really against the definition of crypto. You can't have a centralized entity. So to call one person like a king of crypto, like maybe Satoshi, but that's it, because nobody knows who Satoshi is really. Could be a group, could be dead. Who knows?
Probably dead.
Yeah.
No, he's more the dictator.
Satoshi is the dictator.
No.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah, and if Satoshi's gone, how many fewer coins do we actually have?
Yeah, that's a great
21
question,
million.
right?
Do we have 19? Do we have 18?
Yeah, because he owned 1 million of them or something, right?
And how many have just been lost over the years too?
Yeah.
And people don't have their keys, and
I lost about 10 of them at Mount Gox. I always called it Mount Gov. It was a Japanese company.
you got goxed.
I got
That's a subconscious thing, I think.
It might be. Yeah. Look, anyway, Bitcoin at $25,000. It was interesting last week. The man in the arena, Chamath, and everybody else was like, woo, Bitcoin's going to get a BlackRock ETF, or the SEC got in trouble with the court who said that they have to actually look at Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF submission application, etc. And we're like, got to buy Bitcoin. They were all running to buy Bitcoin. The Bitcoin popped, I don't know, what, 8 or 10% last week, and now it's given it almost all back. It might be up 1 or 2% from that announcement.
Oh, not even. I think it's flat or down.
Yeah.
So
it's
there you go.
Just more hype.
I
Different
bought
source.
Bitcoin for 11 years personally. I have a little bit in the hedge fund. Not even a little bit. We buy Bitcoin a little bit here and there in the hedge fund. We got about a 3% position, you think, Bryce? A little less, probably 2.5% position in Bitcoin right now. I'm a buyer.
20K, is that the next tranche?
I was just as answering a question on the Trade with Cody chat on that, and frankly, I'm probably a buyer of a little bit of Bitcoin every 3 to 5% lower from here. So if it goes below 25,000 in the hedge fund, I'll buy a little bit. If it goes below 24,000, I'll buy a little more. I'll buy a little bit every, say, $500 to $1,000 lower, and I'll buy 20 bips worth, 0.2% of a position all the way down. Maximum size I'm allowed to have in cryptocurrency in my hedge fund is 5%. When I started it 5 years ago, that's what I put in there. I can own 5% Bitcoin, 5% options, 5% private markets, and mostly just public equities, long and short. But yeah, I'm a buyer of Bitcoin. All fiat, all currency roads lead to Bitcoin eventually. That's my belief. It has been for a long time, and I truly think Bitcoin in 10 years will be the reserve. Maybe not 10, in 20 years, Bitcoin will be the reserve currency for most of the world, replacing the U.S. dollar. On Mars, they'll be using either Dogecoin or the SKTLs token that we created for space.
There you go. Speaking of SKTLs, let's talk some space. What do we got on for this week?
Dan, they're going to do another Starship launch at SpaceX. Is that the rumor? Is that what Elon tweeted last night?
Yeah, he did.
Yep.
Will they have more success this time?
What's that?
Will they have more success this time? I mean, last time it was relativally successful. It got up.
Like, what will be defined as success this time?
Getting to orbit would really be amazing, but expected on the second time.
I think we have to look at what the objectives of the launch will be as they state it. So getting off the ground, clearing the pad, that was all good stuff. If it's now a certain altitude or orbital insertion, whatever it is, then fine. But if it doesn't work, so what? They'll launch another one. Yeah. So we've had this conversation before about this, mindset we've all grown accustomed to because of NASA over the last 50, 60 years of thinking that a rocket blowing up is a failure as opposed to a learning event and progress. And so I think, things are going to break. Things are going to blow up. We're going to lose people in space as we go forward. There's no doubt about it. So, it's not like saying it'll never happen. It's a matter of when, not if. And so the more they keep, launching them, the sooner we're going to get to a really stable vehicle that is dependable and can start putting up thousands of satellites at a time or many hundreds at a time and be ready to lift what is really going to be the first big payload, which will be the new space stations that are under development to go up at the end of the decade. So that's going to be the big test. is going to be when it starts carrying very precious, not so easily replaced cargo.
Dan,
Space stations.
they after they blew up the launch pad itself last time with the sheer force of the rockets that were thrusting that Starship into trying to get it to space, at least it got it launched. They've shifted to a water cooled cement pavement. What do you call it? What is it? What are they doing over there?
You know, you look at the Kennedy Space Center, and you look at all those launches going all the way back to the Saturn V's and the shuttle and everything. That was all water and concrete. It was like a bazillion gallons of water covered the pad. That's why you had all that beautiful white steam when those things would lift off, because and even so, it's, you know, how much are you cooling it? Well, you're cooling it enough. But I think when you start to work with rockets that have much higher thrust than in previous years, or who maybe sit a few seconds longer before being released to lift off, all of that changes dynamics of what's underneath them. So I thought it was kind of cool that they blew the launch pad apart, frankly. You know, it's another one of these, wow, gee, we didn't expect that. Okay, good. Live and learn.
Dan, you're not allowed to answer this question. I'm going to ask the other three guys. I'm sure you know the answer to this, Dan. The Starship versus the Statue of Liberty. I just Googled it. Bigger or smaller than the Statue of Liberty, Cabana?
Oh, shoot. I saw this somewhere.
Statue of Liberty with the base? Because that's what
I don't know. I just Googled Starship versus Statue of Liberty and got an answer.
I'm going to say it's bigger, but
I'm going bigger.
Bryce?
I'll take that.
You were.
Hold on, I'm typing.
Yeah, of course, my hedge fund analyst gets it wrong.
What did he do?
Roddy, you need a job?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, it's 100 foot taller than the Statue of Liberty, or nearly 100 foot taller, and 131 feet taller than the Saturn V, which was the next tallest rocket ever built. Of course, the Saturn V had much bigger, smaller payload capacity because it was mostly the rockets. Is that right, Dan?
The Saturn V was all fuel. Those first couple stages, and then the only real payload was the lunar module sitting behind the command module. So, it's not like they were bringing other stuff with them. It was just all of what they needed to get that into orbit. And then by the time it left Earth orbit, it was really only that upper stage that got them out to the moon. And then they, command module, lunar module, that was it.
Dan, Bryce had some skepticism yesterday in a random discussion we had in passing about the lunar module. When we sent the guys to the moon, and then they get in this tiny little thing, and a tiny little like firecracker goes off on the bottom of it, and it gets them back into orbit to their spaceship that then brings them back to the Earth. He was having a hard time understanding how they were able to get. How, number one, was that tiny little thing able to lift off the moon, and number two, how was it able to actually go get next to? Okay, but how did it have enough thrust to get back to the ship that was orbiting the moon?
1/6 gravity, right?
There you go.
Yeah,
No gravity.
1/8 gravity. So they didn't have a lot of Earth to push against to get up there. Number one. The thing weighed very little. The lunar module, you could put your hand through the sides of that lunar module. It was basically the consistency of aluminum foil, the walls of a lunar module. There wasn't much to it. It was very, very delicate.
Hey, Cabana, while Dan's talking, let Bryce share his screen. I think he just pulled up the video.
But you can't see a big thrust because there's no oxygen on the moon. So you weren't going to see big flames. When you launched, you saw a little burst and then a lot of debris as it lifted off.
You see that, Bryce? Dan, Is there any doubt in your mind? Have you ever watched any of the I've teased on these calls
Please, no.
about the fact that
Here we
we get
go.
to the moon, and I think Dan, like literally, I feel like Dan goes apocalyptic, like he's like he can't pop. What's the word? Apoplectic.
Please.
He can't
Apoplectic.
stand. Yeah, that. He
Yeah,
can't
that.
fathom that anybody would even doubt that we went to the moon. Dan, is there not an iota of, first of all, have you ever watched a documentary about the faking of the moon landing? And
No,
if so,
I can't. I've watched about 10 minutes and then my IQ starts dropping like a rock. I just can't. I can't watch that stuff. It's like, okay, when we're done watching that, let's watch the one about how the Earth is really flat.
The Earth is flat. Yes.
You know, I mean, it's insanity. And, you know, there are people who love a conspiracy to where, you know, they should spend their time on government conspiracies. There's a lot more evidence of that than there is of, oh, gee, we didn't go to the moon. I mean, seriously.
Cabana, let Bryce share his screen now. He's ready.
Oh, is it up? All right.
I don't know how to do it. Sorry, Dan. I didn't mean to interrupt you like 3 times.
No.
The moon's actually hollow, isn't it? And it's like a base for aliens.
It's hollow.
Mission arm is empty. I'm going to get the probe.
Yeah, no oxygen now, no flames.
3, 2,
No
1.
flames.
Ignition.
No flames.
Houston.
No flames. That's still burning. That rocket's still firing.
Who's the director they had do the faking of it? Who's that famous director from?
Still firing.
He did Eyes Wide Shut. Work with me, guys.
Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick faked the whole moon landing. I don't know if you knew this.
Yeah,
Dan.
okay, yeah.
Was it him holding the camera on the moon as it went up in the air?
Yes.
Okay.
Who was filming that, and how did they retrieve?
He was standing next to the obelisk from
Who
2001.
filmed that? And then who got it back to Earth? They didn't have Wi-Fi back then. There's a tape in that recorder that somehow supposedly recorded that.
It was called remote control. It was called an antenna. That's how they filmed it. That's how they got the camera to tilt up on every single mission. I mean, this was not rocket science.
All right, Dan, I'll stop. I got to turn on the air conditioner. I'll be right back. This is too
No, a little hot there, Cody. No, it's amazing. I mean, it's people doubt it, frankly, because it's been so long since we did it that people can't imagine that we did it then when we're trying to do it again now. And
that's right. I mean, that is part that, and I'm being a little bit. I'm being facetious. That's the real reason.
That's the real reason.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Bryce is a young kid, and it is sort of shocking to think about the fact that not only in his lifetime have we not been back to the moon. I'm 51 years old. That was 69 or 68? What
69. 69.
So it's been 54 years since we pulled this off. And we're like, think of the progress that mankind and technology and smartphones and internet and all this stuff has made in 50 years. And we're still like hoping Elon can take us to the moon.
Well, and there's the conspiracy is why did the U.S. stop? The reason, because the race to the moon initially was a Cold War issue, and it was to beat Russia and prove our superiority over Russia. Once we got there, Russia gave up. They quit. They stopped. They ceased the whole thing.
They ran out of money.
And then it was, then it was about space stations, and they built Mir, and then we eventually built ISS. We built the shuttle, which was, a very expensive dump truck to bring things into orbit and stay in our backyard. We never went any further. That's why we didn't go, is because it wasn't to go do science. It wasn't to go explore. It was just a Cold War strategy. Read the history of the Apollo program, John Logsdon's book, Kennedy and the Apollo Years, and you really understand that it wasn't all the glamour and kind of the romanticized thing that it was made out to be in the media. It was plain and simple a race. And the only reason we're all going to Mars, and I used to say this at board meetings of the Planetary Society when they'd say, no, we're not going to Mars, 10, 15 years ago. I said, when China decides to say that they're going to Mars, suddenly we're going to be going to Mars, and it'll be another race, and it's going to be the same thing all over again. Only now you have the commercial sector, Elon, inserted into the equation saying, I don't care what you guys do when you bicker and go back and forth with administrations. I'm going, and I'm going to bring people there. And I think, no, that's right. Not because it's easy, because it's hard. That's right.
And speaking of romanticizing the whole thing, here you
go.
There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet.
As yet.
Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
The Rice part didn't age very well. It should have
Oh no, I know. Well, they barely beat them this weekend.
Oh, did they? I didn't even know that. Yeah.
Texas
You being in Texas, you being in Houston, probably were cheering for Rice. You cheer for Rice?
No,
don't admit that.
No,
don't admit it.
No.
Yeah. Why? By the way, why are all the? I mean, look at the age of the people behind him. There's not anyone under the age of 60. All white, almost all white men, 2 white women, all of which are over the age of 60. What's the deal there?
Look at the year it was.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That was standard for the time, I guess.
And yet NASA's average age for the Apollo program was early to mid-20s.
Right. Why weren't some of those guys in the background?
Because they were still in school when that speech was
I guess
made.
that's 1962. So it was 7 years after he made that speech that they were able to get to.
Yeah. And so, it's a shame that we haven't been back. I've been frustrated since the day I saw the landing, and I was imagining all these great things. Watch the show on Apple TV, For All Mankind. The next season is coming out, and it's an alternate history that goes back, that starts with the Russians landing on the moon 2 weeks before the Americans did, and how it changed the whole history of the space race, because we didn't get out the way they did when we got there first. And we were on Mars in the 90s, and so were the Koreans and the Chinese and the Russians. A completely different view of how history would have unfolded.
Dan, in 50 years, give us your best vision. I've asked the question before, like, how long will it take for us to get to Mars? And if I recall, you were like 10 to 15 years from now?
10 to 15 years after the moon.
Okay, so let's say we're on the moon in 3 to 5 years. So say 15 to 20 years, we'll get to Mars. Picture 50 years from now, 50 years of progress since we got to the moon the first time. It's going to take another 5 years. So it'll be like almost 60 years in between. I want you to go forward 50 to 60 years into the future of the space race from now. Will we still have nationalities competing? Will it be private companies based in nationalities competing? Can you vision at all?
I mean, when you look at 50 years and you look at an international or global type of an initiative, and it's space, I think there's going to be a 10-year period somewhere in there, maybe in pieces or all at once, where there will be some kind of a catastrophic event that sets back the whole thing from being on a breakneck course. There'll be a massive, something will happen. There'll be an explosion on the moon or Mars, or something's going to happen. People are going to die, or there's going to be an armed conflict on the moon or on Mars, fighting over territory where there's water ice, which is the holy grail for anyone to exist on Mars or the moon. And so I think you're going to have that, but I think you're going to see well-established bases on the moon. You're going to see probably hundreds of people on the moon and in orbit, like with Lunar Gateway, operating that as a way station and a place to manufacture and then launch to the planets from there. So you're going to see manufacturing move from Earth orbit in 25 years out to the moon in the following 10. And I think you'll have Mars. We're going to have stuff on Mars pretty fast after we get to the moon. We're not going to go sit there Again, it's the private sector. We're not going to sit there for 20 years until NASA decides we're now ready to go to Mars. Okay, Elon's just going to keep pushing. Starship is built for Mars. It's not built for the moon.
So is Elon going to have his own country on Mars, or will he put an American flag?
I could see I could see there being corporate owned installations. Okay, so SpaceX
not depending on the United States government for defense or anything of that state, of that community, or whatever you're going to call it.
SpaceX is building, satellites and other military hardware for the government now. I think they could probably, there will be a U.S. presence that may look after security, but it's just as easy to have private security in a place like that. I think you'll see a SpaceX, city, if you will, albeit small, as you would potentially see other companies, and you'll see countries. It'll look a lot like Antarctica on the moon. You'll have government installations in different places that avoid each other, but in the case of an emergency would probably cooperate. That's what Mars will look like, I think, in the beginning.
Bryce, our friend Alfonso is always saying that Elon has this emperor complex. Maybe he's emperor of Mars, and if he lives long enough, or if the what is it called when you get to the point where man can live forever? The singularity. If the singularity will get here, maybe he'll be the emperor of Mars in a Optimus robot body.
You know what? I think if you like Elon, he's a visionary. If you don't like him, he's got a complex. And I think that's the reality.
Camps. It's like the Republicans and Democrats. I don't like either, but I like lots of Republicans and Democrats. So I don't really like Elon. I think he's got a complex, but I love the guy. He's amazing.
If not Elon, who?
Bryce.
Jeff Bezos, whose ego couldn't fit on Mars. I mean, I'd rather have Elon. And everybody used to like to get photo ops with Elon until he, took Twitter and declared his intentions. And now all those people are trying to cancel him. It's pretty funny. Yeah. They tripped over themselves to get a picture with him and say that they knew him. And now they, there's something wrong with him. Yeah, okay.
There's a book trilogy, the Mars trilogy, Red, Blue, Green, Mars, and it talks a lot about a lot of the things that you just discussed.
Yep.
Corporations going, conflict.
Yeah. Read
how
those
people
books.
gather.
I'm telling you, Kim Stanley Robinson and some of these science fiction authors who've written great novels about Mars.
Yep.
I mean, you can see the future right there. They're brilliant books. They're great reads if you like any kind of sci-fi.
What'd you say? Say it one more time, Joe Anderson.
It's three Red books. Mars, Blue Mars, Green Mars. It's three books. Cool. Kim Stanley Robinson
is the author.
Lots of detail, lots of interesting things. How they space elevators, how they gather asteroids and hook up the elevators to them, and big thinking, crazy stuff.
And then there's another series of books called The Asteroid Wars that was written 20-something years ago that talks about asteroid mining and exactly what happens. And it's all out there. You don't need your imagination. It's been imagined for you pretty well, actually. All scientifically accurate. So, which is nice. It's not fantasy stuff.
Anybody see the Chamath man in the arena comment but me? Anybody follow this? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Man in the arena, trying stuff. Some will work, some won't. Chamath Pound Patalia. You need to go read the tweet. It's hilarious. That's the end of the discussion for today. I don't have anything else.
But that is the issue, though.
I saw your anti-Chamath tweet, but
yeah, you got to go see. It's all anti-Chamath. Like, honestly, I was just telling Bryce, I want to run into Chamath somewhere and be like, "Hey, arena man, you suck!" Like, I want to totally. I'm so mad at that.
Yeah,
guy.
but that is a quote.
People who lost money in his SPACs.
That's a quote everybody should really know.
Well, yeah,
and it's not his.
He was quoting FDR or the original. It's Teddy
Roosevelt.
Yeah, the original Roosevelt.
And it's all about, you can either stand there and watch and experience nothing and don't take any risk, or you can get out there and try and fail.
Yeah, but see, the problem is that Chamath took no risk and made hundreds of millions of dollars, and the retail investors who bought his fraud SPACs lost all their money. And he goes out there and he's like, I'm the man in the arena. You're anonymous and you always will. Like, he was mean to these people who lost money in a SPAC. It's disgusting. I don't know why I got on that. I was going to make a joke about man in the arena, and none of you guys knew what the hell the reference was. So
that guy's got a complex.
Yeah.
That guy's got a complex.
Yeah.
And it's not too complex.
It's not a very complex complex.
No.
Cabana Crypto, last question or comment. You're leading this. What do you got?
That's about all. I mean, I usually just sit back, and once you guys take over the space stuff, I'm good, man.
But we're at 2:32. This is a full episode, 30 minutes long. It's actually fun. One of the most fun episodes of the SKTLs Volunteer Call I've ever had. Even if you guys don't know my man in the arena, I know you know the Teddy reference, but you got to see the Chamath reference. He hijacked it, and it's hilarious. The memes on Twitter about Chamath are hilarious.
And don't forget Stanley Kubrick on the moon.
Yes.
There you go.
That's right.
With you, bro. With you. So I think about once a month we got to do this to Dan. Like, the exasperation that goes through him when we start questioning the moon landing is hilarious. 54 years and somehow we never did it. But yeah, sure, we did it in 1969, no problem. We didn't have satellite phones, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have Wi-Fi, but yeah, we're getting to the moon. Sure, Dan.
I have spent at least an hour, if not more, one-on-one talking in different times with Buzz Aldrin about the moon landing. And that is not a guy who's
he's a great actor.
Fiction.
A good actor.
Not speaking fiction. Great
Stanley Kubrick booked, had a great casting director.
Yeah. They put him in 2001, I think it was.
I hope Dan comes back next week.
Dan, I hope you'll come
I won't
back.
be here next week. I'm not coming back next week. I'm going to be in London next week.
You're going to be in London.
Sure, yeah.
It's just going to avoid me.
I'll send pictures, and then you can see if you believe I'm actually in London or if I'm somewhere else.
I'll AI generate a picture of me in London right now. No problem.
And it won't be London, Ontario in Canada. So.
Hey, thanks for everything, you guys. Dan, as always, you're hilarious and very insightful. Joe, you're the best. Cabana, you're hilarious, very good host. And Bryce is my main man. So thank you all. We'll catch you guys on the flip side.